We are actually entering one of the more prosperous areas of the city of Hyderabad, where a lot of banking and information technology industry is located. This is one of the islands of, fortified prosperity in a large ocean of poverty. Just adjoining this, I'll show you an area which is, much less prosperous. Indian economy has grown in the last 20 years at over 6 to 7%. But, there's a slender community that has seen a vast improvement in their affluence. Whereas the vast majority who are on the fringes of the entire economy, these groups have been neglected. So it's been a very polarizing kind of growth process.
ఏం పొట్ట గడవక పనులు చేస్తున్నాం స్వామి, అడిగి ఆడ పోయి పనులు వాళ్ళ ఇళ్ళల్లో పనులు చేస్తున్నాం, పెద్ద పెద్ద ఇళ్ళల్లో అడిగి.
బెడ్లు అవన్నీ, అవి గ్లాసులు, అవన్నీ డిజైన్స్, టీవీ, వింటూ బ్యాగులు, చాలా సామాన్ వాళ్ళది, ఏదో చాలా చాలా సామాన్ ఉంటుంది.
One of the recommendations of World Bank at that time was, you have to cut down the public sector or privatize the public sector. So that's one important feature. Two, if there are deep welfare provisions, they need to go because, in the name of fiscal discipline, you first cut down, welfare provisions. So apart from those two, there's an increased opening up of the economy to capital flows and commodity flows. A majority of Indian population, even today, but especially in the 1990s, was dependent on agriculture. So the expectation was that, Indian farmers would get the much higher global prices. But what really happened was that global agricultural markets were going through a recession when Indian economy connected with the global economy. So in reality, agricultural prices for a lot of farmers in India actually declined. Okay, so the output prices declined, and because the subsidies were cut, the input costs actually began to rise. So that is the main story through which, active creation of poverty happens. By impoverishing the agricultural population, you actually impoverish a vast majority of the working population. So there is a push factor operating for people to migrate out of agriculture.
అక్కడ మాకు ప్లేస్ ఉంటే అది అప్పుల పరిస్థితి వల్ల వ్యవసాయం దాన్ని దున్నుకునేదాన్ని కూడా అమ్ముకోవాల్సి వచ్చింది.
మన్నూరు నుంచి మేము ఇక్కడ వచ్చినాం హైదరాబాదు. అక్కడ 100 రూపాయలు ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళు, మాకు పొట్ట గడవలేదు. ఇక్కడ వచ్చినాం హైదరాబాద్లో ఏమన్నా మంచిగా దొరుకుతుందేమని.
ఇట్లే సార్ ఇక సాఫ్ చేసినాం, సాఫ్ చేసుకొని ఇక ఖాళీ ప్లేస్ ఉంది కాబట్టి ఇట్లా సాఫ్ చేసుకున్నాం ఉన్నాము. అంటే ఇక ఇది కప్పుకున్నాము, కవర్ వచ్చి కట్టెలు గిట్టెలు పెట్టుకున్నాము, కప్పుకున్నాము. వాళ్ళు కూడా అంటే సార్ వాళ్ళు కొందరు చేసుకున్న వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు, కొందరు అట్లనే కట్టుకుంటా చేసుకుంటూ ఉన్నారు, కొందరు ఏమో ఇంకా ఇట్లే మనలాగా వెళ్ళొచ్చిండ్రు. ఇక ఎవరి పరిస్థితి వాళ్ళకి చెప్పుకోకుండా అయింది అన్నట్లు.
బతుకుదేరి కోసం మామూలుగా బతకగలుగుతున్నాం. అక్కడైతే సొంత పొలాలు ఉన్నప్పుడు బాగున్నప్పుడు దున్నుకోవడం ఇక్కడ బాగుంటుంది. ఇక్కడ మామూలుగా ఉంది.
The peculiar thing in India is that, the high growth sectors, when you think of information technology, India is now considered to be one of, the top leading centers of information technology. But our total workforce in India is around 500 million. And the entire working population in information technology, computer software, and such services is around 2.5 million. So out of 450 to 500 million, 2.5 to 3 million people work in information technology. That's a minuscule portion. So you actually see growth, but at the same time, you don't need as many workers. More than 93% of our total workforce is actually employed in informal sector. Of course, agriculture is also part of the informal sector. A small proportion of the Indian population, maybe around 5 to 6%, gets to work here, gets to consume the goodies that come from working here. And of course, they also have a lot of workers, doing menial work for these large corporations. You need these spaces of poverty which provides, a cheap source of labor, for the islands of prosperity. So the ocean, it encounters the island, once in a while, but, to get most of the low-paid work done, right, in these islands of prosperity.
ఊడ్చి తూడ్చడం, బాసం తోవడం, బాత్రూమ్లు కూడా కడిగించుకుంటారు, బట్టలు కూడా విండించుకుంటారు, అన్నీ చేయించుకుంటారు వాళ్ళు మమ్మల్ని.
పుట్టి మాకేమైనా ఇస్తే మేము తీసుకోగలుగుతాం. మాకు మా మేడం ఇచ్చింది కదా అని ఆనందపడతాం. లేదంటే కూడా మేమంతా సైలెంట్ ఉండిపోతాం. వాళ్ళు అంతే.
మూడు కష్టం చేసుకొని 10 రూపాయలు వేసుకొని మనం ఇల్లు కట్టుకున్నాలని అనిపిస్తుంది అంతే. ఇక మన ఊరి లోపల పోయి కట్టుకోవాలి, వీడైతే కట్టుకోనికే కాదు.
అక్కడనే బాగుంటుంది. ఇంకో పాప ఉంది అక్కడనే, ఆ పాపని విడిచిపెట్టి వచ్చిన అప్పులు చేసుకొని అట్లా వచ్చినాం. వెళ్ళాలి అనుకున్నాం కానీ అప్పులు వెళ్ళినాక వెళ్ళాలి.
ఇక ఇప్పుడు మనకు బతుకరు ఏడైతే మంచిగా ఉందో ఆడనే నచ్చినట్లే కదా సార్. ఇప్పుడు మనకి ఆడికి వెళ్ళి ఇక్కడ వచ్చినామంటే ఏదో మనం ఇక్కడ తిని బతుకుతున్నాము కాబట్టి బాగుంది. ఇంకా ఆడ ఉంటే అప్పులలో తగులుతారు. దానివల్ల అంటే మరి ఏం చేస్తే పరిస్థితి బాగాలేదు.
Once I was walking in Beijing, very close to one of the high-rise areas, and there was one locality through which I was walking through, which was all nearly demolished. There was one old woman, who was sitting in front of one of the houses, and she started shouting at me, screaming at me, and my Chinese interpreter was smiling, so I asked him, what was she trying to say? It seems the woman was screaming loudly, "Is your country also like this? I have lived in this house for the last 70 years and the government is displacing me without taking my permission." Why is that woman being displaced? It's an old locality in Beijing which is no longer needed, for the new modern economy. So the government has no interest in keeping the people as they are. And corporate players are ready to displace them and build new high-rise towers, make profits out of it. And there are other corporate players who will come and occupy those buildings. So at some level, the logic of displacement of the working people, against their wishes, is deeply symbolic of the kind of capitalism or the kind of larger system that we live in. There are two dynamics that are important to understand about capitalism. One is these societies are unstable, inherently and fundamentally unstable. So, you may create short-lived periods of stability, but that stability cannot last beyond a certain point. Let me just draw it, with a timeline. So one could basically argue that there are two kinds of crises that visit the system with some regularity. One kind of crisis is what can be called as an effective demand crisis. There's not enough demand in the economy. And this is also known as the Great Depression. For instance, in 1929, the Great Depression is a crisis of purchasing power. Societies had become very unequal just before the Great Depression, European societies and American society. So essentially, the majority of the population during these 30 years, they didn't have enough purchasing power. That's what results in the Great Depression. And post Great Depression, after this crisis period, you have the Second World War. That's when there's a lot of war-related expansion of various economies. And post 1945, post World War II, you actually see the emergence of a golden age. So the response of the system was to redistribute income. Workers' wages started improving rapidly. Capitalist profits improved rapidly between 1940s and 1960s. And there was an agreement between workers and capitalists, some kind of a compromise or an accord between these two classes, where capitalists basically told the workers, you work very hard and improve productivity, and we'll share the productivity gains. I think what happened post World War II is that the system needed restructuring of a certain kind where greater equality was the need of the day. Then you have the golden age beginning to decline, by late 1960s with slowdown in the productivity growth, but wages are continuously rising. So you see two phenomena. One is massive inflation across the global economy, but the deeper crisis is a crisis again of profitability. So either you have crises of the aggregate demand variety, effective demand, not having enough effective demand in the economy, or capitalists not getting enough profits. The response this time to the profitability crisis is basically capitalist classes attacking worker organizations, trade unions, or the welfare state, because it provides a fallback position to the workers, and globalization of capital. If workers don't fall in line, capital would go to a developing country where there are much lower wages. So that threat effect was also used regularly. So profitability is restored in the system by the 1980s, but then you have the other problem, which is you have now attacked the workers, you have taken away their purchasing power. So now who is going to buy all the goods that are produced? So starting in the 80s, you have massive amounts of credit being given to the workers, and through the bubbles, consumption processes are regenerated. One is the emergence of credit cards in the 80s. Giving out a lot of credit to consumers, or emergence of various bubbles. If you go to the US, you saw the emergence of the housing bubble. But these are short-lived, because you cannot have bubbles serving the purpose of providing the means of consumption for a sustained period of time. So what you see is by 2008, you see another major crisis, which can be termed again as a demand crisis. People become instruments. The working people become instruments for one systemic need or another, and they are driven by the systemic need. So this is where it comes back to a question of, should people be driven by a systemic need, or should people be driven by their own voluntary desires to lead their lives in certain ways?
మాకు నీళ్ళు ఈ వాటర్ చాలా ఆనందంగా ఉంది సార్. మాకు అన్ని రకాలుగా ఉపయోగిస్తుంది సార్. బట్టలు తుక్కుంటాము, వాడుకుంటాము, మరి పొలాలకి నీరు పెట్టుకుంటాము, చాలా బాగా జరుగుతుంది సార్ మాకు.
In India, there are tribal areas which constitute the population of 8% of the Indian population. భూమి తగదా ఏ ఊర్లో ఇది? చెరువుపాలెం.
భూములు సాగు చేసుకుంటూ వారండి లీజుకి సాగు చేసుకుంటూ మరి ఆవిడకి ఏం చేశారో పట్టా సంపాదించుకున్నారు.
మొత్తం 600 ఎకరాలకి ఫెన్సింగ్ ఏర్పాటు చేసుకున్నారు చుట్టూ. The green areas, these are the tribal areas. So these areas are very resource rich. So the economical forces, they are trying to uproot the tribal communities in order to gain access to the resources. కానీ ఈ 600 ఎకరాల మీద మీ కాగితాలు అయితే లేవు, అసలు రికార్డే లేదు.
మాకు పట్టాలు ఇప్పించాలి సార్, ఎలాగన్నాను మాకు పట్టాలు ఇప్పించాలండి.
పట్టాలు కావాలి.
Typically, tribals actually live in forests or areas where there are significant amounts of mineral deposits. The mining capital, with the help of the Indian state, wants to access what is below ground.
రోడ్డు మీద పడేద్దామండి, ఇంకేముంటుందండి, ఏముంటుందండి, ఏమీ లేదండి.
అదే న్యాయపరంగా కోర్టులలో వాదించడానికి, కోర్టులో చేయడానికి మీరు ఉన్నారు కాబట్టి మీ ద్వారా కోర్టులో వాదించడానికి ఇవన్నీ కూడా స్టేలు తెప్పించుకోవడం, ఇట్లాంటి న్యాయపరమైనటువంటి న్యాయం మీ ద్వారా మేము పొందుతున్నాం.
The tribals are pushed from these tribal areas to the outside areas. So as there is no other go for them, the tribals are opting for other labor work, cheap labor work. ఒకవేళ పట్టా సాయిపుకుంటే ఆ పట్టా కాగితాలు మన నాన్న సంపాదించగలిగితే రద్దు చేయడానికి మనం ప్రయత్నం చేద్దాం. అర్థమైందా? పట్టా ఉంటే క్యాన్సిల్ చేయాలి కదా, పట్టా క్యాన్సిల్ చేయకుండా మనకి హక్కు రాదు కదా.
Any sort of community structures or collective structures or cooperative structures, they are broken down in the process of displacement. They are made to relate to one another as individuals, and they are made to relate to the state as an individual. They are made to relate to the markets as an individual.
We are going to see a village where that village is going to be affected because of the Polavaram Dam, a big dam being constructed by the government. And we also know about the tribal land alienation problem in that village.
Their entire notion of how they should lead their lives is itself, under threat. So there is no choice for them really. The moment they are, they're kicked out of, or displaced or dispossessed, they end up, in a subordinate space, because that's the only way they can be integrated, because they're not, trained in the mainstream.
సంతోషమే, మాకు బాగుంది. వంట చేసుకుంటాక పుల్లలు తెచ్చుకుంటాం, అడవికి పోయి కూలి పని కంటే పొలాల మీదకి పోతాం, డబ్బులు తెచ్చుకుంటాం, ఇవి కొనుక్కొని తెచ్చుకుంటాం, వండుకుంటాం, పుల్లలు ఎట్టుకొని వండుకుంటాం.
ఏరియా అంతా పోలవరం ప్రాజెక్టు ముంపు గురవుద్దనేగా.
లేరు సార్, మొన్న బొర్నగూడ చనిపోతే మీ ఊర్లోకి తీసుకెళ్ళి మీరు దానపరచుకోండి అని చిన్న భారంగా పంపేశారు సార్ శవాన్ని. అలా జరుగుతుంది సార్.
Over the last 20 years, Indian growth process has been very invasive, and it resulted in vast amounts of dispossessing, the poor. We don't know what the future societies ought to look like, but societies with capitalist dynamics, they don't create long periods of justice or stability. That much we know. Right now, post 2008, I think the need of the hour is greater equality. The system needs, in this oscillation process, you actually need greater equality to prevail in the system for the survival or the sustained reproduction of the system would have moved, even in an organic way towards greater equality. But what prevents that from happening is the strength of financial capital, which was bailed out after the crisis. In the 30s, right, when the Great Depression happened, financial capital collapsed. Banks collapsed. If you just go, to the US in 2 years or 3 years, 25,000 banks collapsed. But today, what happened is the bailout packages actually rescued, financial capital. So they are strong. If you look at the stock markets across the world, they have recovered fully, and they are calling the shots again, and they are controlling the states and their expenditure patterns, and they are preventing the kind of restructuring that the system needs. We need to ask the question, is there a way in which this instability can be reduced without the state taking over the entire activity of planning? And two, how do we reduce injustice? Especially this sort of what rising inequality basically indicates is that although some people are working extremely hard, right, they are not getting the fruits of their labor. Thirdly, can we think of economic models that are not so wasteful, that are not consumption oriented in the same way? See, these are, I don't know if there is a coherent answer that comes from, one overarching model, or paradigm right now. But all I'm saying is the existing society with its dynamics does not fare that well on any of these three axes of stability, justice, and sustainability.